Hello, once more, everyone. Welcome back to the channel back here on YouTube doing Week 7, 2024 Big Ten predictions. After going 6-2 last week in the Big Ten predictions, my personal season record is now 57-17. I don't have my computer again this week, so I can't show you the records. But 57-17 is the record at this moment. Going into Week 7, we have 7 games scheduled on the slate. So let's get right on into it. Halfway done the season after today. So let's get started after this weekend. Let's get started. First game tomorrow night, Friday. Northwestern travels to Maryland for the night game. Under the lights, Northwestern this year. After last week, they lost 41-24 to Indiana. Overall, Northwestern this year, they've had a season where it's been up and down. Last year, they bounced back after going, and I predicted them last year to go 1-11. This year, I don't know how good Northwestern's going to be after they made a bowl game and won last year. But overall, looking at Northwestern and Maryland, this game's going to be pretty interesting to see. Maryland last week, they were idle. I picked Indiana against them 2 weeks ago, and they lost 42-28. But looking at this matchup, both teams coming off losses going in their last few games. With that being said, I think both teams is a bounce back game for both. And with the bounce back game for both teams, I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup to see on paper at the end of the day. And I think we might have a chance to see these two teams play well this week. And I think both teams will play well. I think it's going to be a closer game. And with that being said, being under the lights in Maryland, I think Maryland's going to come away and get a win here on Friday night, tomorrow night, on the season. So good Maryland to win there for me. Moving on to the next matchup. On Saturday afternoon in Iowa City game, I'll be at Washington Huskies going into Iowa City. And I think the storyline of this matchup is Washington going on the road to play a Big Ten team as a new Big Ten member. And I'll say this only because I've seen it happening. Washington last week coming off a win to get a 4-2 as their 27-17 win against Michigan. Iowa, they're coming off a 35-7 loss to Ohio State as they're 3-2 now. Look at this matchup on paper. Washington, their first time they went across country, they played at Rutgers and got beat up big time. They lost by 3 points, though. A close game, 21-18. They had some mistakes in that game. And Iowa, on the other hand, they're coming off a 35-7 loss to Ohio State, a game they should have played well in. And I said it was going to be a game where I was going to stay close for a while, which they did, but they ended up losing 35-7 at the end and scored till the fourth quarter, unfortunately. But look at this matchup. I think Washington going to Iowa. This is going to be a tough test for Washington. Their first game against Iowa City, against the Hawkeyes in Kinnick Stadium, a tough matchup environment for a team that to come and play. And Washington, their team that played in the national championship game when they lost to Michigan last year. And then this last week, they beat Michigan, the team they played in the national championship game and lost to. They beat them 27-17, and Iowa lost 35-7 last week. I think this game's going to be a close game. That being said, I think this game's going to be about for Washington is going to be about if they don't make the mistakes like they did against Rutgers a few weeks ago. And for Iowa, if they can bounce back to their former selves and how they did earlier on the year and went 3-1 of their first 4 games. For Iowa, I think it's going to be one of those games where they have to bounce back overall after losing 35-7. And for Iowa, I think they're going to have to play well this week and on the same page. With that being said, I do think Iowa comes away and gets a win, surprisingly, to get 4-2, as I do think Washington, as I do think the Huskies get their third loss in the year. So I'll give the Iowa Hawkeyes the win there for Saturday. We'll see what happens, though, coming up on Saturday. Next up, we have Wisconsin going into Rutgers Saturday. And Wisconsin, talk about Wisconsin for a moment. Wisconsin calling them off a win 52-7 against Purdue last week. A game they have not scored they haven't scored 50 plus points in a game against a team and given up 7 points against its opponent in the Big Ten. And I saw this since 2014 when they beat Nebraska. And Wisconsin against Rutgers. For this game, Rutgers comes in. They're coming off a 14-7 loss to Nebraska, a 7-point loss. And overall, looking at this matchup, Rutgers and Wisconsin, these are 2 teams in the Big Ten this year, I think, that are trying to stay middle of the pack. Overall, it looks like Wisconsin, 52-7 last week. And the week before, 38-21 to USC 2 weeks ago. But looking at this matchup, Wisconsin looks like they're coming together a bit with their backup quarterback playing, with their quarterback and Tyler Van Dyke being out For Rutgers, I think they're a pretty good team though. They've come into themselves this year. They've won games. They beat Washington at home. I think in this week against Wisconsin for Rutgers would be, can we beat another good team and show people that we can beat teams. I'm not so sure this week. I think Wisconsin will have the advantage coming in. I think this game is going to be close though, just like the game against Washington for Rutgers. I think it's going to be a close game for them against another team with a W in Wisconsin. But I do think Wisconsin gets to win surprisingly here on a Saturday afternoon. Moving on to our next matchup. We have to stay in the Big Ten. We have to stay out west for this one, the next few games. Penn State, they travel to USC. And with there being 3 Big Ten games this week where you have teams traveling out west, I want to bring up a storyline I saw, a stat I saw for Big Ten teams that travel out west to play the new teams in USC, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. For the Big Ten teams that were in the Big Ten before that have to travel out west to play Big Ten teams, the new teams in the conference, I've seen this stat, and I'll repeat this. The teams that have traveled out west in the Big Ten this year, there have been 8 games out west for Big Ten teams from the past that have gone out to play the new teams. The Big Ten teams that go out west to play the new Big Ten teams are 1-7 in the 8 games, and the only win is by Indiana, a 42 to 10 win against UCLA. And I can tell you this why. UCLA is 1-4, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the teams that have traveled to the Big out west, it's an interesting thing. 1-7, I think it needs to improve. I think it will this week. Penn State and USC, though, getting back to this matchup. USC playing Penn State. It's going to be interesting to see. Last time these two teams met up was in the Rose Bowl back in 2016-17. And USC won on a last-second field goal that game against Penn State. By the way, and I do think it's going to be a game, Penn State and USC, I think it's going to be a close game. But I do think USC gets to win their second win against a Big Ten team at home this year after beating Wisconsin a few weeks ago. I do think USC continues that trend and gets another win this week after losing 24-17 to Minnesota on the road last week. Moving on to the next matchup. We have Illinois at home this weekend, playing against Purdue, the Boilermakers. Purdue, what do we have in this matchup? Unfortunately, Purdue 52-7 lost to Wisconsin last week. And then the week before, 28-10 lost at home to Nebraska. For Illinois, they're coming off bye week, it looks like. A few weeks ago, they played... Who did they play a few weeks ago? They lost 21-7 to Penn State in a game that they lost their unbeaten record. Last week of the bye week, Illinois had a bye week to settle down about it. They're now 4-1, 3-4-1 on the year, 3-1 or something like that. They're 4-1. They're 4-1 on the year. Unfortunately, going into this week for Illinois against Purdue, this is a matchup where both teams have won games in the past against each other, and it's also a rivalry game. And look at the past with this rivalry. These two teams have played pretty well over the years. They've mixed and matched who wins and who loses every year. Unfortunately, this year I do think Illinois gets to win against Purdue playing at home. So give Illinois the win there on Saturday afternoon. On Saturday. Moving on to our next matchup in the Big Ten. Unbeatens now. Yeah, the unbeatens. We got the 5-0 Oregon Ducks going up against the 6-0 Ohio State Buckeyes. Buckeyes, who are bowl eligible. One of the 2 teams in the Big Ten that is bowl eligible on the season. Looking at them both. Oregon, Ohio State, 6-0 versus 5-0. College game day is going to be there on Saturday afternoon. This game is going to be the night game on NBC, it looks like. Look at this matchup with Oregon and Ohio State. These 2 teams, both unbeatens. Hard to believe I'm going to say this. These 2 teams haven't played each other in a big game since they were back in the first inaugural college football playoff in 2014-2015. With that being said, I do think it's going to be an interesting matchup for both teams that are there. We're going to play at home against Ohio State in a key matchup for unbeatens. It kind of makes me think these 2 teams could rematch again in a Big Ten title game. Whoever wins this game, I think, will have an upper advantage in the Big Ten the rest of the way. Because if it's Ohio State, they'll be 7-0. If it's Oregon, they'll be 6-0. Ohio State will jump to 6-1. I do think it's going to be an interesting game, though, to talk about and see what happens. I do think it's going to be a close game. I do think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be a battle of which quarterback and which team can make plays. With that being said, I do think Oregon gives Ohio State their first loss of the season, playing at home on Saturday night. So, give the Ducks the win here on this one on Saturday night in a primetime Big Ten matchup. See who wins. Lastly but not least, our last game of the night. For Saturday, we have to go Minnesota as they travel to the Rose Bowl to take on the UCLA Bruins. An interesting matchup to bring up here in week number 7. And first of all, UCLA's storyline is a 1-4 in their first 5 games in the year. Only win was way back when in week 1 against Hawaii. 0-4 since. And as a Big Ten team, they've had a rough stretch this year. The last game, they lost 34-13 to Oregon. And this week coming in against Minnesota, it's going to be interesting. Minnesota coming off of 24-17 win as they upset USC. It's going to be interesting to see who wins this matchup, though, I think. Looking at it on paper, it's going to be interesting to watch. UCLA, I do think, will play a good game, but I think Minnesota is going to be the team that comes in and surprises people and gets the win. As I do think in Minnesota, it becomes the second Big Ten team to win a game on the West Coast this year. So give me the Gophers here on Saturday night, on the late game, Saturday night, in primetime against the Bruins. As I am taking the Gophers over to the Bruins, I do think the Bruins get a 1-5 on the season, unfortunately. With that being said, that's week 7 Big Ten predictions. I hope you all enjoyed. Comment below who you think is going to win. With that being said, have a good day. Stay safe. Please don't forget to watch, like, subscribe, tell friends as well to do the same if they haven't done so. Also, don't forget to hit that notification button below so you know when there's a new video on the channel. With that being said, have a good day. Stay safe. And peace out. I'll see you right back here next week for week 8 on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Stay safe and peace out. Bye for now. See ya.